Cathay Pacific, 2023 is an important time to prepare for Cathay Pacific. 2023 is an important time to prepare for the full recovery of flights and strive to increase flight volume to pre-epidemic levels. In order to stimulate the recovery of Hong Kong's aviation market, both the SAR government and Hong Kong's local airlines, mainly Cathay Pacific, have also made great efforts to promote it. Among them, the most generous is that the SAR government and Hong Kong Airlines have given away 500,000 air tickets for free around the world, and 140,000 of these 500,000 air tickets have been targeted to the mainland in April. From the Hong Kong SAR government to Hong Kong Airlines represented by Cathay Pacific, it can be seen that they attach importance to promoting mainland tourists to Hong Kong. Hong Kong Airport Authority launched the launching ceremony of the free ticket activity in Shanghai. However, recently, a passenger broke the news that on a Cathay Pacific flight in the mainland, the flight attendant refused to issue blankets to passengers under the pretext of language barrier and laughed in private, hereinafter referred to as the blanket incident, which caused an uproar. Serious and fast. I think everyone already knows the ins and outs of this incident, so there is no need to repeat it. Based on my experience in working on the front line of flights for many years and dealing with flight attendants of numerous foreign and regional airlines, the performance of the flight attendants involved in this incident was extremely unprofessional. Among other things, refusing to provide services to passengers on the grounds of language barrier is an act of failing to perform one's own duties. The main duty of flight attendants in flight is to provide services to passengers, including but not limited to meeting passenger requirements, handling emergencies, communication, and coordination, etc. Even though different airlines provide different levels of service, their main purpose remains the same, that is, to provide services to passengers as service industry personnel. The so-called language barrier is obviously not an excuse for not providing services. In the case of Qatar Airways, the United Arab Emirates, which I have more contact with, when implementing Chinese routes, 2 or 3 Chinese flight attendants or flight attendants who can speak Chinese will be arranged among the cabin flight attendants of more than a dozen people, so as to facilitate communication with Chinese passengers and provide them with serve. And even for some foreign airlines that do not have Chinese flight attendants, and the flight attendants do not understand Chinese, such as some Russian airlines, non-Russian airlines, it is still possible to communicate with poor English and gestures to understand the needs. After all, the world is so big. As long as you have the willingness to communicate with each other, you can always complete the communication in various ways. Therefore, from the perspective of flight attendants, the behavior of Cathay Pacific flight attendants shown in the revelations is extremely unprofessional, which is highly inconsistent with the image of Cathay Pacific as a world-class airline. This blanket incident is undoubtedly a very serious negative public opinion for the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region government and Cathay Pacific Airways. What is full of black humor is that the ticket used by the passenger who exposed the blanket incident when taking the incident flight was one of the 140,000 free tickets given out by Hong Kong in April. The SAR government and Cathay Pacific paid a lot of money to invite mainland tourists to come to Hong Kong, but the tourists actually came by plane and were pissed off. No one can accept this, right? It can even be said that it is no exaggeration to say that the positive effect brought by the free air tickets that Hong Kong spent a lot of money on was completely overshadowed by this incident. The SAR government attaches great importance to this blanket incident. Chief Executive Li Ka-chiao bluntly stated that such an incident would never be allowed to happen again, and the Hong Kong Secretary for Transport and Logistics also issued a statement condemning this behavior and said that he would interview Cathay Pacific to request rectification. It must be said that Cathay Pacific reacted very quickly to the blanket incident. Within 48 hours of the outbreak of public opinion, Cathay Pacific has issued 3 consecutive statements and completed an internal investigation. The 3 flight attendants involved expulsion. If similar major negative public opinion occurs in mainland airlines, they will be fired at the speed of light within 48 hours. This situation can be regarded as very decisive. For example, the recent incident of Xiamen Airlines pilot secretly filming the women's restroom was officially announced within 2 days of the incident. It can be said that Cathay Pacific's handling of the personnel involved has at least reached the top level among mainland airlines. Cathay Pacific issued 3 announcements about the blanket incident within 48 hours. And if you make a vertical comparison, you will find that Cathay Pacific's handling of the personnel involved in the violation is swift. After all, during the 2019 Hong Kong amendment turmoil, Cathay Pacific pilot Liao Songxian, who participated in the 7.28 Central violence incident and was arrested by the police, was not announced to be expelled by Cathay Pacific until August 14 from being arrested by the police. It took a full 17 days to be fired by Cathay Pacific, and there were also public demonstrations and protests in the middle, and the Civil Aviation Administration of China issued a major risk warning to Cathay Pacific. Compared with the two, Cathay Pacific's handling of the flight attendants involved in the blanket incident can be regarded as serious and quick. Hong Kong people protest against Cathay Pacific Airways shielding pilots involved in violent incidents, photo/Hong Kong media. Behind the changes. In just 4 years, Cathay Pacific has changed from conniving and protecting mob employees to dismissing employees with discriminatory behavior at the speed of light. The changes are quite big. If we want to analyze the reasons behind the changes, we can analyze them from both political and economic aspects. To be honest, Cathay Pacific and its leadership played a bad role in fueling the turmoil in Hong Kong in 2019. Not only did the cover-up of thug pilots mentioned above, but also condoned employees to participate in the so-called August 5th strike, which also triggered a major risk warning from the Civil Aviation Administration of China to Cathay Pacific at that time. The chairman of Cathay Pacic's parent company, Swire Group, went to Beijing urgently for consultations. Subsequently, Cathay Pacific CEO Hogg announced that he was responsible for the recent incident and resigned. The Hong Kong SAR government has ushered in the impact of the new crown epidemic before the turmoil of amendments subsided. In June 2020, the Hong Kong SAR government launched a 27.3 billion Hong Kong dollar rescue plan for Cathay Pacific to help Cathay Pacific out of the predicament of the epidemic. One of the conditions attached is that the SAR government will send observers attend Cathay's board of directors. Although the SAR government observers do not participate in the decision-making of the Cathay Pacific board of directors, they play a supervisory role to a considerable extent. By January 2023, with the current chief executive Lin Xiaobo taking office, the leadership of Cathay Pacific has changed a lot compared to 2019. Looking through Cathay Pacific's announcements over the years, it can be found that in August 2019, there were 5 executive directors and 8 non-executive directors on the Cathay Pacific board of directors. By March 2023, only 1 executive director and 2 non-executive directors were still on the board. All other board members, excluding independent directors, were replaced. The result of this replacement was revealed in the resolute and quick response of the leadership of China and Thailand to the blanket incident. For the leadership of Cathay Pacific, the most worrying thing is that this blanket incident was linked to Cathay Pacic's disgraceful actions in 2019. It was handled seriously and quickly and clearly emphasized its position, all of which reflect the leadership of Cathay Pacific. Strong desire to survive. In addition, economic factors also determine that Cathay Pacific must not offend the mainland market at this time. If you look at the annual report released by Cathay Pacific, you will find that in 2022, the revenue contributed by Hong Kong, Taiwan, and the mainland will account for 2/3 of the total revenue. If you take into account that the world is still in a state of great reduction in international shipping caused by the new crown pandemic in 2022, then the data for 2018 will be more representative. The 2018 Cathay Pacific annual report shows that Hong Kong and the mainland accounted for 20% of Cathay Pacific's total revenue. Half of the revenue. Counting Hong Kong and mainland China together, it somewhat means Kobe and I scored 83 points together. Even Hong Kong's local revenue is mostly contributed by mainland tourists flying to Hong Kong. It can be said that for Cathay Pacific, the importance of the mainland is unmatched by other markets. Cathay Pacific revenue figures by region in 2022. 2018 Cathay Pacific revenue data by region. Even though the current state of emergency of the new crown epidemic has been declared over, and international air transport is also rapidly recovering, for Cathay Pacific, its crisis is far from over. Cathay Pacific has not announced its results for the first quarter of this year, but judging from the current monthly operating data, it has only recovered to 50% of the level before the epidemic, and there is still a long way to go before turning losses into profit. Moreover, in order to protest Cathay Pacic's 40% salary reduction, Cathay Pacific pilots recently scraped foreign workers to mix flight hourly fees, which also reflects Cathay Pacific's severe financial situation to a certain extent. Therefore, it is not difficult to understand that Cathay Pacific has made a quick decision on the blanket incident, a major negative public opinion involving the mainland, and made a gesture. At this juncture, it is counting on the mainland tourists, and it must not give the god of wealth to the public. Excuse me. Of course, If you look carefully at the annual report of Cathay Pacific Airways, you will also find a very interesting detail. In the 2018 annual report, Taiwan was listed alongside Japan and South Korea, and in the 2022 annual report, Taiwan has become the same as Hong Kong and mainland China. Tied. Considering that the 2022 annual report was announced in March 2023, and Cathay Pacific's board of directors also completed a major shake-up at that time, the details behind this are also meaningful. It is easy to treat the symptoms but difficult to cure the root causes. For Cathay Pacific, the most important thing at present is to quickly eliminate the negative impact caused by the blanket incident, and the most critical point is to convince mainland passengers that such incidents will not happen again. Judging from the latest feedback, after Cathay Pacific announced the expulsion of the 3 flight attendants involved, Cathay Pacific's mainland flights have actively distributed blankets to all passengers, and broadcast in English, Cantonese, and Mandarin. Providing blankets and broadcasting in Mandarin is essentially Cathay Pacific's job. Now it can only be regarded as making up for some of the service defects artificially created by the flight attendants. I even made up my mind that Cathay Pacific's cabin department held a meeting with the flight attendants overnight, emphasizing that services should be provided without discrimination according to the process, and there should be no discriminatory behavior. However, there are still doubts in the field of public opinion whether this is a temporary solution rather than a root cause, and this kind of doubt is also reasonable. Now that the turmoil has changed, will it be revealed after the limelight? After all, what we want to see more is to cure the root cause. However, addressing the root causes is not an easy task for Cathay Pacific. As mentioned above, the overall political spectrum of Cathay Pacific's leadership is reddish after several rounds of adjustments, which can be confirmed in the handling of this incident and many details. But as the middle and grassroots of the executive level, it is not so easy to change the overall political spectrum. After all, to put it bluntly, Cathay Pacific employees also come from society and are part of society. The problems existing in the flight attendants of Cathay Pacific Airways are not an isolated case. They also exist in the whole society to some extent, and they are the epitome of the whole society. The reason for the situation is complicated by historical factors and realistic factors, and it will take a long process to cure the root cause of the change. With the implementation of the Hong Kong National Security Law, we can see that some changes are taking place. These changes will undoubtedly have subtle effects, but it will take a long time. And the accumulation of small changes will change from quantitative to qualitative, and finally form obvious and positive changes. And even if it is just a palliative cure, it is one of countless small changes, and the little things will eventually converge into a big river. I believe that the service attitude of Cathay Pacific flight attendants will improve in a short period of time, but it will take time to prove whether this change can be sustained. It will take time to prove whether Cathay Pacific's promises made after this incident can be realized. Listen to what he says and watch what he does. Hong Kong identity success rate increased by 30%? How can it be done? I will leave Hong Kong in a few years, and I always want to leave some words to my favorite city on earth, and it is also the place where I have lived for the longest time. My favorite Chinese song September's High Heels has a line, "This is not Paris, Tokyo, or New York." I love Paris, Tokyo, New York, London, and Taipei. They are the places where I would like to live forever, but Hong Kong is my home in this life. I like Hong Kong, which is consistent with my liking for a refined and lazy life. I have lived for nearly 20 years and I don't know how expensive daily necessities are. My family asked me how much beef is a caddy, how would I know, and I have never been to a vegetable market. Most of the middle-class Hong Kong people have Filipino maids, who are free from the troubles of housework. People who come to Hong Kong from the United States often say that Hong Kong is very similar to New York, dynamic but more compact, and I think so. The similarity between Hong Kong and New York is that people from all walks of life with huge differences live in different circles, but they live in peace and coexist peacefully. It is not necessarily necessary to enter the other party's circle, and it is not against harmony to cross occasionally. The way of life of the people at the bottom is very different from that of the upper class, but they don't have the thought of hating the rich. The system is fair, and success is the hard work and luck of others. The worst people live in cramped conditions without losing dignity, with free medical care, education, and pensions provided by the government. Hong Kong is indeed a paradise for the rich. The mainland rich people you know, Jack Ma, Ma Wei-tang, etc. have actually immigrated to Hong Kong and spent hundreds of millions to buy houses and properties. The children of Tencent executives also go to school in Hong Kong. This is due to Hong Kong's low taxes, as well as the high quality of education, medical care, and consumption. Therefore, Hong Kong is the place with the most expensive house prices and commodity prices in the world. When my daughter was a child, she had a fever and stayed in a private hospital for 4 nights, which cost more than 60,000 Hong Kong dollars, with medical insurance of course. But low-income families don't have to worry about it. In a government hospital, all expenses, doctors, nursing, medicine, and surgery, in the intensive care unit are only 100 yuan per day. What are Hong Kong people like? There is no one answer because the circles are very different. Hong Kong has a population of 7 million, and there are hundreds of thousands of expats, circles, who are people from all over the world who come to work and live in Hong Kong, accounting for 5% of Hong Kong's population. There are Taiwanese, Koreans, Americans, Australians, French, Japanese, etc. living in Hong Kong. Every community is not small, and has its own places to hang out. Expat is mainly located in the central and southern districts of Hong Kong Island, but it can also be found in the most dilapidated alleys in Hong Kong. A French friend of mine has lived in Hong Kong for 15 years, and he knows much more about the delicacies in the small streets and alleys of Hong Kong than I do. He often takes us there, and he teaches me to buy flowers at the flower market in Kowloon. Hong Kong natives also have very different circles. A friend from Beijing said that Hong Kong people are greedy for money because she got into that circle herself. Let me tell you about the circles I saw. 1. My daughter's violin practice teacher is a Hong Kong native who has returned from studying abroad. Come to help my daughter practice piano for half an hour on Saturday and Sunday morning, and only charge 250 yuan. I think it is too little to give her more, but she is determined not to. Courteous, clean-faced, a Christian. This is a large middle class in Hong Kong, with a small income and well-educated. I took my daughter to a charity organization, and the girl who received us was also such a girl, with a clean face, a good education, but a job with a low salary. 2. The doctors and nurses I went to see a doctor, the lawyers, accountants, and various professionals I came into contact with. Long Ying Tai Road. What is civilization? Go to Hong Kong to see a dentist and you will understand, telling a story about a dentist and a nurse. This is how I feel when I go to the dentist, civilized, polite, efficient, and of course expensive. 3. A place where I get a massage and make a facial mask. There are some from the mainland, and some local Hong Kong people. I don't have a high degree of education, I like to watch TV dramas, and I care about celebrity gossip. In this class and other classes without college education, men like to bet on horses, and both men and women like to play mahjong. 4. Tea restaurant waiters, taxi drivers, etc. They have probably one of the lowest paying jobs and there is no shortage of rude people, yelling. My experience is that if you speak softly and respectfully to them, they return the courtesy. I say be nice to everyone and they are always polite and respectful to me. No matter what class you are in, Hong Kong people are the most hard-working people I have ever met, except for the mistresses of the rich. Influenced by British culture, they are very sensitive to whether others are polite, and will immediately distinguish whether the other party is educated or not. Li Ka-shing and high-ranking government officials treat people at the bottom with courtesy. Everyone is disgusted and looks down on the rude nouveau riche from the bottom of their hearts. Don't speak loudly, it is educated to speak softly. In Hong Kong, the more polite you are, the more polite others will be to you. It may be the opposite in the mainland. But even uncle, who doesn't read much, has a lot of self-esteem. He will never flatter the executives when he sees them. It's good if he doesn't scold. Once when I was seeing a doctor in the hospital, the former chief secretary for administration was sitting next to me in line, but no one greeted him. I met Lung Chunying, Tang Yingnian, Yip Lu Shi, and Lung Weishi on airplanes, shopping malls, and on the road. Like ordinary people, everyone seems to have never seen them. Former chief executive Carrie Lam went to the vegetable market to buy vegetables by herself. My daughter goes to a Mandarin international school, 1/3 are foreigners or mixed race, 1/3 are Hong Kong people, and 1/3 are mainlanders in Hong Kong. The most active volunteers in the school are Hong Kong people and foreigners. Many Hong Kong people pay regularly to support charitable funds every month. If there is a catastrophe, such as the Dunhua group of hospitals, etc., the public will donate enthusiastically. The government is very supportive of charities, and donations are tax deductible. Hong Kong's streets are narrow, even dilapidated. Mainlanders usually have a bad first impression when they travel. There aren't many grand high-rise buildings. But the devil is in the details. I often go to the cleanly decorated medical clinic on the first floor in the dilapidated and narrow elevator, and there are all kinds of people in the elevator. 70% of Hong Kong's land is country parks, where nature and humanity are perfectly integrated. It takes 5 minutes by car from the center of Central, and you can reach the natural mountain roads and woods, hear the birdsong, and breathe the air of negative ions. From the window of my house, I can see eagles flying in the sky from time to time. It is said that Hong Kong is the only metropolis in the world with eagles circling in the sky. Tiwo. In Hong Kong, different people live completely different lives, but they all have their own living and cultural circles. Reasons why I like Hong Kong. 01. In Hong Kong, you don't need to look at anyone's face, you don't need to beg anyone. Government agencies are the most efficient in the world. I went to Australia to travel and apply for an international driver's license more than 10 years ago. I found the phone number of the Department of Transport on the internet. I called and the person told me the application process clearly. International driver's license, take a taxi home. It took a total of 40 minutes from the phone call to get the international driver's license back home. The police are also of the highest quality in the world. In China, I am afraid of the police, and in the United States I am also somewhat afraid, but in Hong Kong, I see the police are kind and trustworthy. Among the professions most respected by Hong Kong people, the top few are teachers, doctors, civil servants, and policemen. On the way, the first choice for directions is the police, who are polite and reliable. A friend's daughter caught her finger in the POS machine in the supermarket, and the supermarket called for rescue. Not long after, 4 or 5 firefighters and an ambulance came. In fact, the child's finger had been freed by itself and it was not a serious problem. The firefighters greeted and checked in every possible way. The parents were very moved and even apologetic. Among China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan, I feel that Hong Kong people are the most rule-abiding and law-abiding. When doing things in Hong Kong, you don't need to talk about human relations, you don't need to find someone, you just need to follow the rules. There will be trouble finding someone. A parent from mainland China was sentenced to prison for sending gifts of several thousand yuan to the school teacher. Hong Kong people have a strong sense of law-abiding, so when I return to the mainland to do things, I am often criticized for being too horny. But in my opinion, there is a big risk that there is a flaw in the contract. There are all kinds of services in Hong Kong, and there are basically prices and markets. You can always get better services at a high price, but you must care about the grassroots. Those with high incomes pay to go to various private clubs, but the government provides community services in every district, and low-income groups can also go to various facilities provided by the government to exercise, such as the South China Club, etc. Land is very expensive in Hong Kong, but every community must have free parks and children's playgrounds. There is also Austin Park where the land on the top of the mountain is extremely expensive. The large lawn is open to all the public. There is also humanistic care for Filipino maids. There is a scene in Hong Kong. Every Sunday, several main streets in Central are banned from driving for Filipino maids to party. Filipino maids are sitting around in front of major grade A office buildings, eating and chatting, and sometimes they have their own fashion shows. But no one will drive them away by affecting the appearance of the city. 02. Efficient and high-quality medical care. I have seen medical treatment in China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, the United States, France, and Japan, and my favorite is Hong Kong. The daughter's school sends a notice every year to make an appointment for a dental examination provided by the government and pay 20 yuan. 03. Peace of mind, freedom, and efficiency. Within a 10-minute drive from my home, 20 minutes in a traffic jam, I can do everything. My daughter goes to cram school, I see a doctor, and I drink Hong Kong-style milk tea or authentic Italian coffee. Each community is not big, it cannot be compared with Beijing and Shanghai, but although sparrows are small, they have all kinds of internal organs, and people of different classes have places to go. In an alley next to the most expensive Mandarin hotel, you can buy hot dogs for a few yuan. Opposite the landmark, where the upper class come and go, is the Global Building, which serves Filipino maids. Hong Kong is the most efficient and free economy in the world. It only takes a few days to open a company in Hong Kong, and it is enough to provide basic personal information. A total of several thousand to 10,000 yuan was spent. I often complain about the trouble of filing tax returns for property purchases in the UK, the US, and Japan, because it always seems more complicated than Hong Kong. One of my houses in the United States was sued by the tenant, and I was required to pay several $1 million in compensation. A shortcoming of American law is that litigation lawyers can be divided, so they often encourage clients to file lawsuits, resulting in unnecessary litigation and legal costs. Hong Kong, on the other hand, follows the British law, which is more beneficial to economic development than pro-business. Because of assisting a friend's divorce lawsuit, I have dealt with solicitor and barrister in depth for a year or two. I am impressed by the thinking of the Hong Kong family court judges, people-oriented, especially children-oriented, highly professional, and even moved me. To quote a sentence, among the 200 countries and thousands of major cities in Asia and the world, there is no second city like Hong Kong that has the greatest freedom and the rule of law at the same time. I have lived in Hong Kong for more than 10 years, and there are still many details that make me fall in love with this city. There is no way to finish an article. If you like my sharing, you can follow me. I will continue to talk about the real Hong Kong in the next article. Some girls seem to have a heart, and some girls really have a heart. After that day, several readers asked the same question, which is the example I mentioned in the article. Readers think she is nothing. I understand what she understands, and I understand as soon as you say it. Why am I not as good as her in marriage? Why is my career not as good as hers? Why do I invest less than her? You are not as good as her in marriage, your career is not as good as hers, your investment is not as good as hers. I don't know, there are various reasons, but you are casual, it's nothing to say lightly, I can roughly guess your level. Some readers asked me that day, how did I judge that the person in the article is actually a master? How did I judge? Don't use such cliches as Tang Niu knows Tang Niu in the world. What exactly are the details that make me guess like this? This kind of question can be regarded as a substitute for thinking. My judgment standard at that time was the dialogue in the chat. She told me that since she and her husband met on a blind date, she has always been the one who coaxes her husband. For anything, at any time, no matter who is right or wrong, she will always apologize, and she will always take the initiative to coax him. She spoke in a calm tone, and she probably wanted to give the impression that she was a good-natured person, and I guess that was the intention. But my pupils shrank when I heard it. I was very nervous after hearing this, and I immediately looked at the other party, even though the other party had just left the position of a housewife, had just entered the workplace, and hadn't even gained a foothold in the workplace. I was the vice president at that time, and I immediately looked at each other at the same level, and I was very nervous. A person, even if made of mud, still has a temper. There has never been such a thing as being so good-natured that you will take the initiative to coax people at any time and under any circumstances. There is no such thing, never. Just like Lin Chiling is not born with a baby voice, it is because of her decades of hard work to maintain the baby voice. Lin Chiling was interviewed once, and the host asked her, I think you are always acting, as if you never relax for a moment. Was there a moment when you wanted to be yourself again? Or, simply indulge, one night, have a meal of fried chicken and beer, and speak to yourself with your real voice? Lin Chiling thought about it gracefully, and told such a story in baby voice. She said that there was a time when she was very depressed and always had insomnia at night. She sat by the window and wanted to say something to herself in her real voice. In the dead of night, no one could hear her except herself. But she didn't. Not once. This sentence means that she has never removed her makeup, never removed the makeup deep in her heart, she has never had a moment of peace, a trace of relaxation. It's not that she has no temper, she doesn't allow herself to have temper, it's not that she doesn't have a real voice, she doesn't allow herself to make a real voice. This is the goddess, I was watching this show, that's how I felt. If you want to achieve the ultimate in any field in the world, it is a process of smashing yourself and putting them together again. Many people have asked me why I didn't teach my son high-frequency trading, which I mentioned before. The reason is very simple, if you don't do it, you can't do it. I once cited one of the simplest trading scenarios, which is to quickly pick up cigarette butts, not the kind of cigarette butt picking in the value investment field invented by Buffett's teacher. It means taking advantage of other people's instant wrong orders, buying them in, and then quickly throwing them out to make a little difference. According to the law of large numbers, when there are enough traders and enough transactions, someone will definitely make a mistake. Then in theory, you can arbitrage so quickly. In reality, very few people do this. Do you know what? Because people are human beings, and you are also human beings. If they make mistakes, you will also make mistakes. You are right 1,000 times, and the little profit you eat is not enough to spit out once you make a mistake. But I can do it. What? Because I am not human. The fact that I am not a human being has been certified by the platform, and it is not me talking nonsense. The platform allows two ways to place orders, one is manual knocking, and the other is batch placing by machine. When I placed the order manually, the platform asked me, "Are you placing the order manually?" I said yes, I did place the order manually, and I did it manually at first. The platform didn't believe it. They told me that there is no need to lie about this matter. Manual and machine are allowed, and it's not a big deal. Is it worth lying about this kind of thing? I said that I really didn't lie to you, because I know that everything is allowed, so why should I lie to you? The people on the platform side told me that there is a limit to the approximate reaction time of a person and the interval between them. What is the range of work hours per day, and after how many times? Mistakes are inevitable and have limits. The limits of human beings are, those who make platforms are very clear. This is like a sports organization. They know that Bolt's 100-meter record is 9.69 seconds. Now you tell people that you ran in 8 seconds. People's first reaction is of course that you are lying. It is impossible for human beings to break through 9 seconds. How can you run for 8 seconds? I smiled and didn't make any excuses. If you say I lied, just tell me. Because it was originally an innocuous thing, a joke in the early years. So I said, I am certified, platform certified, I am not a human being. It is impossible for people to place orders repeatedly in such a short period of time, and never miss a return under such a high frequency. Human beings cannot do it. Anyway, their professional platform has proved that I am not human through scientific methods, so I have to admit, well, I am not human. It's normal for the other party to think that way, just like before I heard Lin Chiling's interview program, I didn't believe that there is a person in the world who can never speak his true voice. Forever. Even in the dead of night, even insomnia alone. I think humans can't do it, Lin Chiling did it, and the platform thinks humans can't do it, but in fact, some people can do it. There was a TV show where the actor Shang Xiaoyue sang an opera, most of the audience applauded, only one who learned opera and was kicked out cried. Why is he crying? He said, to be able to sing like this, how much pain would it take? This is called the outsider to watch the fun, and the insider to watch the way. Do you think green tea is easy to make? In fact, it is not that difficult to understand something, just like hundreds of years ago, a rich second generation in Europe laughed at Columbus. What is so difficult about discovering the new world? Aren't you just sailing in one direction? I understood it at a glance. Yes, as long as you are happy.